So are the automatic relays on Earth.
Humans are augmenters. We have a long history of not only altering our landscape, but our very bodies. Given our ancestral past and our evolutionary need to adapt to changing environments, we have fashioned clothes for climate protection, disfigured our flesh, and built a kaleidoscope of tools to better navigate our Darwinian sojourn here on terra firma. We are naked apes no longer, and perhaps never were once we branched out from our predecessors. Like our mythic progenitors, Adam and Eve after the fall, we woke up to a cursed world, and we are hell-bent, an instructive if ironic pun in this context, to change all that is not to our preferences. Indeed, human culture may be defined as our continued attempt to recreate the world according to our desires and wishes. We may fear our tribal god, but that doesn't mean we have to like his/her creation. We have developed several approaches to reframing the cosmos, but two are fundamental. One, recalibrating our thoughts. Religion and mysticism are forerunners here, to better handle what is on offer. And two, manipulating matter to make our daily struggles easier. Both avenues, of course, are not mutually exclusive and are analogously akin to the interface between software and hardware. Rearranging bits of atoms, however, is a cumbersome project, and it has often taken years, even decades, to build our dream monuments, whether it is the Great Pyramids of Egypt or the exquisite Taj Mahal in India. Naturally, it is much easier to transform our thoughts about the world at large than to rearrange nature to our fancy. Yet, we are on the very threshold of doing both in ways quite unimaginable a century ago. Enter the new era of mixed reality, where we transform the appearance of atomic bits into almost anything we wish, and all of this by donning a standalone virtual reality headset. Simply put, we now have the technological capability to radically modify our spatial landscapes, not by rearranging chunks of elements from one place to another, but by overlaying their innateness with dynamic and mind-boggling overlays. Take as just one instance your office. Look around at the walls, the floor, the desk, the windows, and whatever else you have filled the room with. Now imagine being able to creatively alter the appearance of all that you see. The walls turn from white to an exploration of the Milky Way. The wooden floor changes into a blue ocean. The windows transform into portals of ever-changing Impressionist artwork. And your desk becomes a Star Trek-like command module. With a stroke of your hand, the music alternates to fit your mood, and the very things you touch feel unlike what you expected. And you seamlessly assume an alien body such as Klaatu, or your favorite animal such as a giraffe, a panoply of Avataric possibilities. That the future is here now came into sharper relief this past week when my technologically literate son, Sean, and I were fortunate to be invited to attend the Oculus Connect 5 conference in San Jose, California, where the latest innovations in virtual and augmented reality were on display. The conference is primarily geared for VR developers and thus has a number of very technical workshops on game and film development. What impressed me most, however, were keynote talks by Oculus CFO Michael Abrash and CTO John Carmack. These two computer programming pioneers gave extraordinarily lucid outlines of the future of VR and AR. In the past 3 years, we have witnessed an explosion of VR devices and related products, ranging from HTC's Vive to Samsung's Gear to Oculus Go. While it is true that the general public hasn't yet truly warmed to virtual reality, the fact remains that the field is still in its infancy, and we have yet to see its full potential unleashed. Until now, that is. What Abrash and Carmack and other VR pioneers showed us was that we now have the ability to transform the world around us wirelessly, without being tethered to a high-end desktop computer. The natural and artificial worlds are becoming one, and what this portends is so radical that it will upend everything we do. From work to play to lifestyles to sports to communication to our love lives. As Elon Musk rightly pointed out recently, we have already become cyborgs because of how often we use our smartphones and tend never to go anywhere without them. We have computerized ourselves by amplifying our understanding of the world with a device that allows us access to enormous amounts of information at the touch of a button or through the modulations of our voice. A good example of where we are heading, even if at first it may seem far-fetched, can be gleaned from the movie version of Ernest Cline's widely read novel Ready Player One, published in 2011, which Steven Spielberg made into a movie 7 years later with dazzling special effects. The plot is centered in the year 2045, where the main character lives in squalor, but is freed from his slum life the moment he dons on his VR headset and his entire surroundings become wondrously transfigured. 3 years ago, some believed such talk was merely hype, but in the interim, we can see that what lies ahead is almost beyond our comprehension, since where the borders of what is real and what is artificial will blend in ways that will eventually make them appear indistinguishable. Of course, CGI effects in films have already exceeded the Turing test, where that which is computationally generated is taken as organically real. With mixed reality, we will CGI anything we choose whenever we wish, and in the process add multiple layers of informational texture on even the most mundane of objects. But what struck me most during the Oculus Connect 5 conference was when Michael Abrash demonstrated the next iteration of digital avatars, where instead of cartoonish surrogates in VR, we can have nearly exact representation of our very faces and bodies in cyberspace. Thus, instead of 2D FaceTime on a cellular gadget, we can, in virtual reality, have full incarnations that look and sound just like us, with each mouth, eye, and hand gesture mimicking whatever we do in our own private homes, even if we are separated from our friends or family thousands of miles away. We will be present even when we are not there. The most remarkable feature of great VR is that one feels a sense of presence when other disembodied avatars appear and join you in Echo Arena or Unspoken, or just hanging out in your own self-generated VR living room. It is both a spooky and an uncanny feeling. This neurological trickery, convincing us that an image is real or an effect is a cause, is what makes VR magical. But when the virtual can overlay the real world, as in mixed, then we have crossed over into a completely new experience. we are on the threshold of an informational singularity, which can be likened to a black hole, where all we can know now is at the event horizon, but not what is beyond. Although it is still in a very rudimentary stage, my son Sean got a partial glimpse into mixed reality when at the conference he tried out The Void, which is advertised by the company that operates them around the country as a full sensory immersive experience with you, your friends and family walking around inside the action. It's location-based entertainment. That means you visit one of our locations and you walk into real-time hyper-reality that combines interactive sets, real-time effects, and amazing technology. As for myself, I got the chance to beta test the forthcoming Oculus Quest standalone headset that allows for 6 degrees of freedom, motion tracking, and the ability to use it anywhere and anytime. Mark Zuckerberg, in his keynote speech, announced that the commercial product would be released in spring of 2019. I was taken to a scaled-down version of a tennis court and was allowed to move around as if playing a real game. As I donned the headset on, I was transported into an animated arena, and I immediately felt that I was somewhere else. And as I played against my opponent, manifested as a cartoon figure reminiscent of a character from the old Wii sports game, I reacted as if in the real world, despite it being merely a sophisticated computational simulation being produced by the VR headset I was wearing. There is another angle that is important to remember here. The very best VR headset in the known universe is our own 3 pounds of glorious meat, our brains. We don't see exterior reality as it actually is in some ultimate Kantian sense, but rather as our bodily mechanisms filter selected incoming data streams and then recreate temporary models about what is surrounding us. We are, in sum, already living in a virtual reality, since all that we experience is done through a channeled medium that conceals much more than it reveals. Therefore, with VR, we are merely tinkering with our own neurological presets in order to refashion and reframe the perceived physical limits of the world that surround us. In terms of education, my own field of interest, I can readily see how VR, AR, MR will dramatically change instruction. Instead of lecture halls with professors droning on for hours on end, the student can have his or her own Socrates, Aristotle, Einstein, or Niels Bohr in Avataric garb and interact as if such luminaries were actually present. Couple these digital geniuses with access to the World Wide Web of information, and one can learn like never before, and at each person's own learning gradient. Even in religion, it won't be very difficult to have one's chosen Ishtadevata summoned on command, whether it is Jesus, Nanak, Buddha, Mahavira, or one's own personal guru. Meditational practices can be greatly enhanced with direct avatar guidance, where one-on-one exchanges will become commonplace. The radiant form of those we love and adore will manifest accordingly, and we too will assume illuminated garments of our own choosing. All of this, I know, may seem like techno-hyperbole in our overwrought age of all things digital, but if we look back over the past several decades, we can readily see why this is not the case. For instance, envision going back to the Space Center in Houston in 1969 for the NASA moon landing and showing those operating the vast computer network your iPhone X and what it can do. How would they react? especially when you show off its size as 6.20 by 3.05 by 0.30 inches, and that it weighs less than 8 ounces. As ZmeScience.com points out, your smartphone is millions of times more powerful than all of NASA's combined computing in 1969. What we take for granted today would seem inconceivable 49 years ago. I recall when I was 11 years old going to see the James Bond movie You Only Live Twice with my childhood friend Scott Robbins. It was an early 11:45 a.m. showing at the famous Grauman's Chinese Theatre, and we enjoyed ourselves immensely. However, after we left the darkened theatre in the early afternoon, I was overcome with a slight, unnerving depression as I came into the daylight and walked on Hollywood Boulevard, since everything looked quite drab in comparison to the bright clarity of the film's setting in Japan and the wizardry of James Bond's various exploits. This melancholy feeling was similar, but even stronger, when I would visit Disneyland with my family, only to have to leave the Magic Kingdom at night and enter back into the real world through the bleak parking lot that adjoined the amusement park. I think many of us get these somber feelings whenever we experience something that we really enjoy, but which is temporary, and which, after a set duration, thrusts us back all too soon to the ordinariness of day-to-day existence. Perhaps this is why having the freedom and the control to remake our worlds is so appealing. VR, AR, MR, and their future iterations have become viable technological tools for us to recreate the cosmos that we were born unconsciously into. Being a stranger in a strange land, to crib one of Robert A. Heinlein's more famous science fiction book titles, we have evolved to remodel our planet, and, like the Judeo-Christian God of old, we want to make it in our own image and find it good. Instead of one given universe, we wish to live in metaverse, where that which is virtual and that which is augmented can intersect with our natural environs, and where we live and who we are can be made infinitely elastic, so that the only borders are the limits of our imagination and how far it will take us into the new frontier of our digital wonderland.